So I have a happy thought. I just thought I might as well be efficient. Mine's because we're actually making some headway in this field, and I'm going to tell you about that right now. But I'm just so happy about some of the things that are changing right now and the lives that it's saving as a result. So I will tell you about that.
Okay, so if you just, that advances the slides right down there.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to start by just introducing myself and oh, where is it? Oh, here we go. Okay, I'm going to start by introducing myself and just giving you kind of a quick story. So I came 10 years ago to a Breath of Hope Lung Foundation. It was a really small nonprofit filled with board members, all volunteers that had lost somebody or were losing somebody to lung cancer. And when they hired me, they were just sort of ready to go to the next step, which is I think they were raising $150,000 a year through a race. And, they just were ready to go to the next step and develop the programming and become a nonprofit business. So when I came in, I had a couple job offers, and I had a really hard time deciding because I had been working with at-risk kids a lot in North Minneapolis. And I just had a heart for that. But it was just like, I finally said to my husband one night, I literally don't know what to do, and I have to decide by tomorrow. And he said, "You've been obsessing about lung cancer for a week. I think that's your answer." And so just to preface this, my aunt Marcella was this just amazing human. She was so like, I don't know, how there's just people like this. She was just so filled with joy. And, no matter what we were doing, when she walked in the room, it lit up. It got louder too. And that was just how Marcella was. And just kind of out of nowhere in her 60s, she developed lung cancer, but she had been a smoker. And that's the #1 cause of lung cancer. And so she was sick for just a couple of years. And when she was in hospice, I used to go visit her and pray with her. And the last conversation I had with her was an argument, because she said to me, "I guess I deserve to die because I couldn't beat that habit." And I was like, I didn't know anything about lung cancer. I was like, "You do not deserve to die. Everybody's got habits that aren't good for them. And, you do not deserve to die." And so that was my last conversation with her. And it just like stuck with me over the years, and then when a Breath of Hope Lung Foundation came to me and was looking for somebody to kind of just take this business or take it up to a business level, I just had to do it. So, and I'm really glad I've stuck around. It's been a really, really good journey. So some of the stuff that we talk about, you have to understand when you're watching this presentation that there's materials on the table, but what you really have to hear from this presentation is that, there's a lot of things that aren't quite right in every country. And in our country, lung cancer isn't quite right. And being my age, I remember possibly how the stigma was formed, because I remember in the 70s when I was in high school, that we were constantly getting speakers, and at that point we understood that smoking had a lot of health risks associated with it. And so we were trying to teach kids not to smoke. And so we were starting to change from what had happened in the 50s and 60s, right? But everything that was presented to us put kind of a negative on the people that smoke, and also the people that get sick with specifically lung cancer. So smoking causes, and smoking is the #1 cause of lung cancer, but there's all kinds of causes of lung cancer, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But smoking also causes heart disease and colon cancer and breast cancer and all these other cancers. But what happens very specifically in our country to lung cancer patients is the minute you tell somebody you have lung cancer, whether it's your best friend or your spouse or your kids, they'll go, "What, did you smoke?" So there's just an instant connection to smoking. And believe it or not, 60% of people that are diagnosed today are non-smokers. 60%. So that's really, really important to know that as you listen to this talk, because I don't know what your habits have been in your lifestyle, in your lifetime, but these people that just think that it's only about smoking are actually setting themselves up to be at risk, because they're not understanding that it can happen to anybody. If you have lungs, you can get lung cancer. And that's why we go out and talk. We want people, regardless of your smoking history, if you have any other risk factors like family history or pollution or living in China where there's a lot of problems with the air or just, all these different things, asbestos exposure, all these different things. You just need to be aware of what lung cancer looks and feels like, and you need to get help. And you might even have to request your own CT scan if you're somebody that didn't smoke, because we still, even in our medical community, immediately associate lung cancer with smoking. So 60% of people get lung cancer didn't smoke or don't smoke. About 20 to 25% of them never smoke, never tried a cigarette. All right, so we're going to just do a quick quiz. Do you know when Lung Cancer Awareness Month is? It's November, and it's the #1 cause of cancer death in the US, and it kills just about twice as many women as breast cancer. Almost twice as many women die of lung cancer every year compared to breast. Nobody knows the white ribbon and nobody pays attention in November. October is breast, November is lung. What is the 5-year survival rate for lung cancer? Breast is at about 91, 92% right now. So each year, more Americans die of lung cancer than probably the top 3 other cancers combined. And again, remember that 60% of those people are not smokers when they're diagnosed. They either quit a long time ago or they never smoked at all. And then, oh, I gave this one away. So this is just a couple things to think about. But I guess the last one, we got cut up here. Oh, well, it says, low dose CT scans. Okay, I'm not going to go there yet. I'm going to tell you that 3 times as many men die of lung cancer as prostate cancer. So you just have to come away from this understanding that lung cancer is a serious problem in our country, and we could do a better job of it. We can't expect the government to pay for everything, and that's why organizations like A Breath of Hope exist, because we're doing some of the things that can't be covered by the public sector. So, yep. And remember, only 23% survive. So it's the number. I don't like. If I were you and you're hearing this for the first time, I'd go, "What the heck? Well, how do I not know this?" But it's that there's just this shadow kind of over lung cancer, and a lot of it is tied to that smoking stigma. We just have put it in a little box and kind of hope it'll go away, but it doesn't. All right. So half of those diagnosed with lung cancer live in low-income communities, and we have some, diversity. Some of our gaps in care lead to gaps in who gets lung cancer. But I think one of the really important things here is the third bullet that I just told you breast cancer gets, and I don't mean to pick on breast cancer, I'm so thankful for this work, but 92% survival rate, they get 10 times more research funding from the government than lung cancer does. And lung cancer kills twice as many women. So there's just some inequities on this particular cancer. There's a lot of nicknames for this cancer, like the orphan cancer, the underserved cancer and things like that. But it's just a cancer that needs to kind of rise up and people need to be more aware of it. And then the low dose CT scan is the only way for detecting right now. It's the only approved technique that's used for screening for lung cancer. So I want you to hear this also. 74% of people are diagnosed in stage 3 or 4 with lung cancer, right? That's why there's 23% survival rate. It's tough to beat 3 and 4. The low dose CT scan is safe. It's got lower radiation than mammograms, and it's simple. It's non-invasive, like a colonoscopy. But the only people that are allowed to get it and get an annual CT scan are people over the age of 50 who have 20-pack smoking histories. So heavy smokers over the age of 50 can get an annual low-dose CT scan. Nobody else can. You can't even go in and ask for it and say you'll pay for it. The hospitals are allowed to give it to you. So if you're not over the age of 50 and a heavy smoker, you really can't get preventative screening for the world's deadliest cancer. It's like, how backwards is that? So that's something we work on a lot at A Breath of Hope, is early detection, because that is just ridiculous. I think knowing the symptoms, but also knowing that primary care is still kind of catching up. There's just been a lot of misinformation about lung cancer over the years. Women right now are getting lung cancer in their 30s and 40s. There's an upsurge right now in young women getting lung cancer, while the rates among men have been dropping for the last 10 years. Nobody really understands why. And again, these women a lot of them are non-smokers or never smokers. So there's information missing from this whole equation, and we're still trying to figure it out. But the symptoms, like with a lot of cancers, the problem with lung cancer is that we use our lungs every day, every minute, every second, and we have all kinds of viruses that, like bronchitis and allergies, and we have all these different types of things that present the same types of symptoms as lung cancer presents. So if you're going into a primary care physician and you've got, like I just got over pneumonia a couple of weeks ago, and you have, the fatigue, the persistent cough, the shortness of breath. I mean, any of this stuff on this list, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to treat you for a virus, right? They're going to think you have bronchitis or pneumonia or something like that, and that's what they're going to treat you for. If it continues, they should be going to the next level of care. Because really, if you take your antibiotics and you do everything right, take your cold medicine, everything, by rights, viruses last about 10 days, right? So after a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, maybe you would need one more round, maybe it's a sinus infection, but after 2 to 4 weeks, if you still have these symptoms, something else might be wrong. That's when you should get curious, and that's when you should push. And what happens is that people don't push, and physicians, when they're working with non-smokers, they just don't consider lung cancer. It just feels far-fetched to them. So we're doing a lot of work trying to sort of bring primary care up through the the American Academy of Family Practitioners and other big major groups, to bring them up to understand how many non-smokers are getting lung cancer right now, so that these symptoms don't get missed and they call up a scan after a couple of weeks rather than after 6 months or 12 months. Our former board chair, Julie, who's from this area, she lost her mom in her 60s to lung cancer. Her mom had never smoked a cigarette in her life, and she had all of these symptoms, every one of them on this list. And she went to the doctor over and over again, and they diagnosed her with depression. And so for 6 months, she was treated for depression, and she had lung cancer the whole time. By the time it was 6 or 7 months that they finally did a scan, she was stage 4. So this is just something that we want people to learn for themselves. It's self-advocacy, and it's just helping, in a cancer that's really stigmatized and just sort of not understood in some cases, and even by the medical community. We just want you to know your stuff. Causes, smoking's number 1. Radon. I don't know how many people have checked their homes for radon, but radon is the number 2 cause of lung cancer in our country. And radon is the number 1 cause of lung cancer in non-smokers. And you know what? I mean, has anybody in this room tested their house for radon? Oh, wow. Good job. Wow. That's unusual. Okay. Yep. So that's great. Yeah. So, most Minnesotans have not tested their home for radon. It's 2 out of 5 homes have radon. And not only that, I mean, it's a very absolute proven cause of lung cancer, but it's a $10 kit. It's just a quick, easy test. Now, it is not cheap to mitigate. So if any of you found radon in your homes, you probably spent $2,000 to $3,000 to mitigate your home. So it's not cheap to mitigate. So of course that creates kind of a gap for people that just can't afford the mitigation. But at the, for Minnesotans to not be testing their homes when Minnesota has an unusually high level of radon in our soils. And it goes in new houses, it goes in old houses, it doesn't matter, it finds its way in, so that's another thing that we do, is just sort of educate people about that. And then there's all the other things, there's family history, there's pollution, there's new information right now, there's biomarkers that people just have genetically through their family, family genetics. That predispose people to cancer, and there's some that predispose people to lung cancer. So I think genetic testing is something that's coming. So don't smoke, check your house for radon, check with the physician. If you have a smoking history, especially in the last 15 years, just talk to your physician about getting screened, because that's a really important thing to do. Right now, of all the people in America that are eligible for screening, which again, it's a small percentage of people that are, less than 8% have been screened. So I keep talking about the stigma, but you just it's a really big deal. It presses down on every part of this disease. And if somebody's embarrassed to admit their smoking history and they lie when they go to the primary care, they're not going to ID the system, right? Or if they just don't pay attention and they don't know, they're not going to ID the system. But there's just a lot of reasons why most people just don't know that they can receive preventative screening every year. They just don't know it because nobody's told them. So again, it's just one of those things where we talk about breast cancer a lot. We talk about colon cancer a lot. We're doing better and better with ovarian cancer and prostate and pancreatic, but we just lung cancer, it just sort of sits under the table all the time. So again, that's why we're out speaking. Yeah, and this is just really about smoking cessation programs and just helping people understand that we don't judge. I mean, we know better than to judge. And so we don't judge, and we help people. We don't care about the smoking history. We think every life matters. Back in 2008, when we were founded, the lung cancer patients that found us were men, women, young, old, smokers, non-smokers. It was just like a group of people with their caregivers that had pretty much total diversity. They met at a support group in Edina, and they started the Lung Run Walk. And they did that to they were sort of appalled. Remember, this is like 14 years ago, too, 15 years ago. They were appalled that there was no resources and that there was no information out there, and that everything was out there was kind of wrong. And so they started this Lung Run Walk Twin Cities that's still going on at Lake Harriet every year, and now has drawn up pretty close to 2,000 people each year. So they started that. They started A Breath of Hope. They named in their mission research, awareness and education for the public, and patient and family support. And we've continued to have those three program areas be the way that we fight lung cancer. If you're ever looking for something to do, our events are super fun. So, and I'll tell you more about that. The research program, we've invested $2.5 million. We set our research program up to be very similar to the NIH method of reviewing and receiving research proposals. So we get research proposals from all over the country, where the two researchers that we're funding right now are both being published this spring, which is huge, major breakthroughs. One of them is a young researcher, MD, PhD at Harvard, and the other one is an MD oncologist at MIT. So they're a little bit smart. Yeah, so we're really proud of our research program, and we just feel like we like to fund. It's called translational research. So it's that research when you think about research and science, there's the mouse stuff, the cell stuff, the very basic stuff. Then there's translational research, which is basically meant to push the science to the patient within 5 years, which means that this science, there's already a lot of things proven and we're past those initial stages. This science is the final science needed to push it into clinical trial and develop a new therapy. So we tend to focus on translational research. So when somebody gets published and they make breakthroughs, it's a big deal because it's getting ready to go out into a clinical trial and into a new therapy. My happy dollar has to do with what I was just talking about, because in the last couple of years, and I work with all the people all the time that die. So we have these beautiful survivors come in and volunteer and speak for us and hang with us for a couple of years, and then they die. And quite often their kids get involved, or we're part of the whole grief process. It's very painful to watch it. And you know, some of the people that are supporting us now lost one of them, Mary Jane, lost her spouse 10 years ago. If he were alive today, because of all the advances and all the new therapies, it's possible he would have lasted 5 or 6 years rather than 6 months. And so, you know, she might have had him for another 5 years. She wouldn't have kept him forever because we're not that far along in our research. But, you know, we're starting to really see lives prolonged. And it's a big deal when your loved one or spouse or child or whoever gets lung cancer, to have 5 years instead of 6 months. It's a big deal to families. So I feel really good about that. Our White Ribbon Awareness Program is really just trying to get people to understand the facts about lung cancer. And it might be, you know, Catherine Benson, who passed. Catherine Benson was, I don't know if you know Representative Rick Nolan. He was a U.S. representative for years, and his daughter, at the age of 40, got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And she's just this beautiful woman. I mean, really, really pretty, tiny, 4 beautiful children, you know, happily married, the whole story. So she's 40 years old and she's a non-smoker, and she gets stage 4 lung cancer. And Rick really went to bat while he was in office to try to bring awareness and change to lung cancer. But I think, so this picture, I put that up here because Catherine is right next to, at that point, Vice President Biden. And I got invited, and then Rick Nolan is the one on the far right. We don't do politics at A Breath of Hope because we can't. I mean, whoever's in office matters to us, because it just, like, I think we've made enough progress in our country with just cancer research and cancer understanding in general, that we're getting really, really close to finding real solutions so that we don't have to, you know, constantly worry about cancer. And I think this particular day, Catherine and her dad, Rick, met with Vice President Biden privately before this group of cancer leaders met with him, who was up at UMD. And he came straight into the room. You know, we had been there for hours, just going through this whole Secret Service circus. It's just like unbelievable what you go through. And so he finally came into this gymnasium after all these hours of waiting. And he walked in the room. He looked me right in the eye. And I was the only person of this group here, all the cancer leaders around Minnesota that were invited. I was the only one focused on lung cancer. It's just a lot of these people were breast and colon and different other cancers. So he just looked me right in the eye. He walked straight to me. He grabbed my hand and he talked to the group, and he held my hand the whole time. It was so weird. And so, and I was like, holding the vice president's hand. But anyway, but I think there was a bunch of we call them suits, American Cancer Society suits there, and higher ups. And I think what he was doing is sending a really strong message to that group. And again, remember, he had met with Rick and Catherine before the group meeting. I think he was sending a message to the group that, what the heck's going on with lung cancer? Because as soon as he was done and he left again with all of his people, and everybody kind of circled me, "Did you know him?" I'm like, nope. I have no idea why he held my hand. But I think he was just really sending a message to everybody. They're like, "Well, what do you do? What does A Breath of Hope do? Oh, lung cancer. Oh, lung cancer." It was so weird. These are the cancer leaders in Minnesota, and none of them do lung cancer. I just find that so strange. It's the number one, sorry, killer. So we have upcoming events. Our events are super fun. If you ever, the reason I brought up Catherine was because Catherine went to the doctor because she had been coughing for 6 months. She had been at work driving her coworkers crazy. And she had this just dry cough that wouldn't go away. She doctored for it a little bit. They couldn't help her. She just quit trying. So finally, one of her coworkers said, "You're driving me crazy." And so at the end of the year, she goes to the doctor. and they do the CT scan. And then she goes to she's getting ready to go to her New Year's Eve party, and she gets the call that they're pretty sure she has advanced lung cancer. And again, 40 years old, and just everything, all these kids, little kids. And so that was why I brought that up, is that I hope that you, by learning something today, if somebody's doing something that makes you just curious about lung cancer, I hope you tell them, go in and push for a low dose CT scan. Go in and push for the scan, because it could save your life. Finding it earlier makes a difference. These events are the things that we do. We treat them less like fundraisers and more like community events. So we educate people, we support the patients and families that come. They're always fun. We usually have some good name MCs and things like that, but the proceeds then go back in to support that research program and our other two programs, patient support for Minnesota too. And this patient support, what we're doing here right now is just support groups. We host the Midwest Lung Cancer Summit every fall. So if you do meet anybody that has lung cancer, that summit's really cool. We have doctors from Mayo and the university and all over the state donate their time for the day, and they give like a one-day retreat, and they just educate, because the well-informed and educated patient actually lives longer and lives better for sure. So we do some of these things to support the Minnesota lung cancer community. And then the Animated Patient's Guide to Lung Cancer is a global patient education program for anybody that gets lung cancer. They can get on English or Spanish. We've had 600,000 visits since we launched 5 years ago. It's a really, really nice program. So if you ever met somebody that has lung cancer, is fighting the battle, and you just want to give them a good resource, youandlungcancer.com is where you can find the Animated Patient's Guide. Transportation, we put this in here because we're always looking for volunteers. I mean, if this talk kind of, means something to you, we've got stuff on the tables. It's hard. We have a driving program for people who are either too elderly or not feeling well enough, or just don't own a car. And the cancer centers around the Twin Cities consistently, when I was trying to figure out how to develop programming here 10 years ago, said, we diagnose people with stage 3 lung cancer. They still have a shot, with stage 3, and they never come back and they die at home because they don't have a car and they don't want to bother. So we kept hearing it. We kept hearing it like it's a real barrier for some families. And then some families, if any of you have had cancer, sometimes radiation is 30 days in a row. That's tough if you're relying on your adult children who have jobs, and it's just tough on families. So we have this driving program. We're always looking for drivers. You can drive as much or as little as you want. You can drive once a month, once every other month, once a week. We don't care. We just need drivers. And then the peer-to-peer companionship is for people that have dealt with lung cancer up close and want to give back to people that have it now. So we're just our mission is just to educate people like you, so that if you are unlucky enough to deal with lung cancer in your family, you recognize it quickly. And if you're somebody that has a smoking history, that you seek out that screening and get that annual CT scan. It can reduce mortality by up to 60%. It's like a really important test. And again, less than 8% of Americans that are eligible are getting it. So, and we're just trying to, end the stigma, because it's pressing down on every part of this disease. And it's just dumb, I mean, it's the #1 cancer killer. Why would you not put all of your resources and your attention on it, right? Not happening. So, again, we feel like every life is worth fighting for, and that's what we do. And then here's how you can help. You can educate yourself and your family. Go to youandlungcancer.com. You can donate. You can attend events. And I am available for questions if you have any questions. Yes.
I have a couple of questions. Why is it prohibited, I think, to get the low dose?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually just really learned that this past year. So everything is sort of controlled by CMA, which is Medicare, Medicaid. And then the USPSTF, United States Preventative Task Services team, decides who gets screened for these different cancers, and they kind of work in cahoots with CMS and CMA, with basically Medicare, Medicaid. So Medicare, Medicaid has said, we will cover low dose CT scans for people who are eligible. And when they say that, and they make that announcement, then all the insurance companies follow suit, right? So we finally, about 2-3 years ago, got them to cover CT scans for people who are at high risk of lung cancer, that group that I mentioned. CMAs and the Medicare, Medicaid people said, if you give preventative screening to people who do not qualify, we might pull our support. You are only allowed, because the USPSTF made the guideline, you are only allowed to scan people with this 20-year smoking history over the age of 50, you know, and if you start scanning people, do preventative screening on people that don't meet that criteria, you risk us pulling out our coverage and all your patients will not be covered. So I know people, I'm actually not advocating for this, but I know people because they can't get it by just asking for it. You know, the Benjamin family, a big supportive group. Grandpa died of lung cancer. Dad died of lung cancer. This is Mary Jane I was talking about earlier. Mary Jane's husband, Larry Benjamin, CEO of Northfield Lines, died of lung cancer, non-smoker. Larry's sister died of lung cancer last year. They're a big, huge family, like 8 living kids. They don't smoke. None of them can get scanned, but they've got family history like crazy. Obviously, possibly something in their genetics, right? They can't get scanned. And because we don't count family history, we don't count pollution, we don't count radon, we only count smoking and age right now. So some of them have just pretended that they're heavy smokers and have a bad cough. And they go in and they get scanned rather than preventative screening. It's called a scan. It's the same thing, but it's a scan instead of a preventative screen because they have symptoms. So, but that is so backwards. You know, we know family history matters. We've proven it in research. Why does it not count? It's because the USPSTF and CMA and, you know, these groups have not yet added it to the guideline. So we're fighting for that all the time. There's a lot of legislation out there. There's a lot of awareness and education going on. We're all fighting to change that. But for now, if you don't meet those criteria, it would be really surprising if you could get somebody to let you pay for a low dose CT scan. And chest x-rays don't really work. So chest x-rays, you have to remember your heart's in front of your lungs. So chest x-rays miss a ton of lung cancer. It's not the right answer. The low dose CT scan goes all the way around your lung and it sees everything. So
I have a second question. Is there a vaping?
Vaping, so to understand smoking and vaping and all of these things, and I'm sure I'm not, I know you guys understand this, but the tobacco industry is extremely powerful. They have a ton of money. And so what they do is they crush research. So we already have research that shows that vaping and Juul and all this stuff that the kids are doing right now, we already have research like flooding out, showing that it causes it causes lung disease, it causes all kinds of health issues. What the tobacco industry, who spends millions of dollars on lobbying and, you know, lobbyists and things like that, what they can do is they can challenge the research and put enough money at it so that it pushes it back for another year or two of research, and then it never hits the public. So, you know, I mean, look how many years it took. We knew that smoking was causing lung disease way before the 70s. We knew that for a long, long time, but it took, you know, a lot of fighting legislatively and a lot of proof before we were finally able to bring it to the public. And then once it comes to the public, it goes to the media and they do their job and it starts, you know, really going out. So yeah, so vaping is just, it's just ridiculous. Of course, if you suck crap into your lungs, it's not good for you, right? I mean, we know this is coming. We've already got research, but you know, it's just like, yeah. Pardon? Yeah. Suck crap, yeah. So, yeah, so I think, you know, it's just another thing. It's just another kind of barrier to getting this disease where it should be. Good question, though. Yeah.
I think when you mentioned the amount of lobbying and the all of back to lobby, you have to understand where the money can lie.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why when you started your comment, you speak about people don't seem to understand, you know, lung cancer, because until 1998, when Minnesota won the case, vaccinated fever racketeering,
Right,
lying to the public.
for sure.
Buying influence.
Yeah.
You just have to be able to recognize that you had to overcome it, because I'm a former smoker. I was never really anti-tobacco until much later in life.
But you know,
But it's because of the influence that I had.
yeah, and think about Cerisi. You know, it's just what happened. But and we don't care about shame blame. That there's no place for that. But you know, think about Cerisi, that all the millions of dollars that came in, none of that went back out to lung cancer. It didn't go back out, it didn't come to us, it didn't go to research, you know. So yeah, but you're right. I mean, I think you can't be a grown-up in America and not understand how much power money has. But like, I would love to see us go out of business because they don't need us anymore, you know. And I mean, it's hard to raise money. Every penny that we spend, we raise, you know, 100%.
Could you talk a little bit about Breath of Hope as an organization and how?
Yeah, so our budget is 1.4 million this year. We've got 7.5 employees. Carrie is our program director. She's in the community outreach and patient support space. We run pretty lean, you know, in terms of our staffing, because we have a business model that's a little bit different from a typical nonprofit. We take part of what we raise and put it right into the savings account, because it goes back out for these research awards and screening awards. The screening awards are just in Minnesota. The research awards are US wide. We just basically fund the best research. So we operate with this mission of trying to create more survivors through research, public education awareness, and patient and family support. Those 3 program buckets are the 3 programs that we hire staff to work in. And does that kind of answer your question? Yeah, there's 250 lung cancer organizations in the US. I would say 220 of them are really small. They maybe raise $20,000, $30,000 a year. Maybe don't really file their taxes, things like that. But we're a legitimate nonprofit business. We're in the top 10 of the bigger organizations. I think we're number 6 right now in terms of revenue and support base. Yeah, I feel good about what we're doing, because the research we're funding it's creating critical new information. So it's just really a big deal that we have a good, solid vetting program. All of our national advisory committee and our local physicians are just brilliant. And it's actually funny to sit at a meeting with them, because they'll read through these research proposals and they're going, oh, well, this one from Pennsylvania, yeah, so-and-so at Davis in California is doing that. Shame on them. They should know that. And they throw it up in the air. It's like, I guess we're not doing that one. It's really fun. And they're just brilliant people that sit in the room together and volunteer to help us vet and, you know, fund the best research. And then the awareness is a big deal too. We hit 20 million people a year with awareness messaging, because we just feel like the stuff I'm telling you right now, you can't put all that on a billboard or in, you know, ads, but there's some key messaging that we try to get out, and we just try to keep pushing it out, because people have to hear it a couple times to absorb it. And then patient and family supports here in Minnesota. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.